There is literally a nonstop news cycle going on in Washington right now, from the war in Iran to gas prices, federal government shutdown, the security lines at the airport. Big finance is also in the spotlight now when it comes to health care. Senator Chris Murphy joins me now to see how much we can fit in. Let's start with health care, Senator. It's a big topic, and you have a bill on this. Connecticut taxpayers are footing the bill to try to keep Waterbury Hospital open and have it renovated. That's all because a private equity firm used to own it, and it went bankrupt. You have a bill to try to address that. What is it?
Pretty simple piece of legislation. You know, what we saw in Connecticut is a private equity firm come in and ruin 3 of our hospitals. And frankly, that's happening all across the country. Private equity comes into hospitals or nursing homes, takes them over, makes big promises, and then strips them bare so that they can make a big short-term profit. The private equity company either files bankruptcy on behalf of those hospitals or sells them to somebody else. It's a disastrous business model. We just shouldn't allow for private equity companies to own hospitals and nursing homes. We made that mistake in Connecticut. We corrected that mistake. My legislation just prohibits private equity firms from controlling hospitals and nursing homes. They can have an investment in these homes. There's private equity investment in Hartford Hospital, but they shouldn't own and control them. And, there's been some Republican interest in this issue because the same thing that happened in Connecticut has happened in places like Louisiana. Hopefully we'll be able to get some interest in this legislation.
So, as you said, Republican State Senator Jeff Gordon here in Connecticut, who's also a doctor, is pushing for something on the state level. However, Governor Lamont, who's a Democrat, and his wife Annie Lamont is in private equity. He says not so fast. We should have a more tempered approach. When a hospital is financially struggling, private equity can move money in. Is that where you're trying to thread the needle with your legislation?
I mean, my legislation doesn't ban private equity from having a relationship with a hospital. It just bans private equity from owning the hospital. I mean, that was our problem in Waterbury, in Manchester and Rockville, was that private equity was owning these hospitals and was stripping them bare of resources. The only place they were making investments was in the bill collection department. So, yes, I think that there's a middle ground here that can get bipartisan support, allow some investment, but never, ever allow for what happened with Prospect in Connecticut, hospital or nursing home ownership and control.
Talk with the war in Iran. You're on Senate Foreign Relations Committee. To be clear and transparent, we're talking on Thursday, and so much can change by the time this airs. But will there be boots on the ground in Iran? It seems as if they're moving in that direction, but do you think that'll happen?
I mean, I think it's instructive that the president has not taken it off the table. So I certainly think you could see American troops on the ground inside Iran. This is already a disaster, just a daily debacle. Gas prices, oil prices, grocery prices, plastic prices, everything going through the roof, and a region that's on fire. Trump cannot control this war from spiraling out of control. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Iran's neighbors are still getting attacked. He just needs to end the war. This idea that escalation is the answer, I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. So we're trying to stop this war in Congress. I brought a vote before the Senate earlier this week to withdraw funding for the war. I lost that vote, but it was close, around 53-47. And we're going to continue to bring legislation before the Senate to try to stop this war before it gets even more out of control than it already is.
Had a chance to talk with Congressman Courtney, Congressman Himes on this. Would love to get your opinion as well. Did the U.S. and Israel have any plan in place for keeping the Strait of Hormuz open, the strait where 20% of the world's oil supply goes through, before the missiles were launched?
Well, they did not, because there actually is no plan that you could have in place to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. This is what we have to understand. That Iran controls the strait because what it does is mine the strait. It drops mines in the water, and that means that boats can't sail through. Just the threat of dropping those mines keeps the strait closed. and it mines the strait with hundreds of little tiny speedboats. I mean, think of like a Boston whaler in Long Island Sound. That's what we're talking about. You cannot eliminate thousands of little speedboats. So the tragedy here is that war planners and intelligence analysts knew that Iran would be able to close the strait, that there was nothing we could do to stop them. That's why we haven't invaded or bombed Iran like this before, because we knew this would be the cost, a nightmarish situation for the global economy, and Trump went ahead with it anyway. The strait is going to stay closed until this war ends, period, stop. I just think that that's the reality.
As we talk, he says on TV today, this Thursday, oh, they're begging me for a deal right now. What do you think is going to be the inflection point? How much will the economy play a part? Do we have to see oil go to 140 a barrel? As we speak, Brent crude is at about 108 right now, but does it have a much higher ceiling before this thing is over?
Yeah, I literally have no idea how Trump makes his decisions, other than I think all that matters to him is what's good for his billionaire Mar-a-Lago friends. And the fact of the matter is, high oil prices doesn't really affect the oil industry. They make even more money when the price is high. So Trump doesn't care about, regular teachers and plumbers in Connecticut who are paying the higher prices. The billionaires and the millionaires are doing okay. So maybe this war is going to last for a long time because he's not really paying attention to the impact it has on regular people.
Let's hope not. Senator Chris Murphy, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it today.